morning, students. In our last lecture, we discussed about ASEAN nations, and there we discussed how these nations try to avoid internal conflict as well as military conflicts. And in 2003, ASEAN nations signed many treaties and they decided to promote peace, neutrality, cooperation, and not to interfere in each other's matters and respecting the sovereignty of each nation. Now, today we are moving ahead. Basically, ASEAN was an economic organization and it succeeded in maintaining its position. The total economy of ASEAN is comparatively much smaller than the economy of US, European Union as well as Japan. But still, it is rising rapidly at very high speed, and therefore effect of ASEAN is increasing day by day. This economic community, ASEAN, its main aim is to prepare market and production which can help in social as well as economic development. And this organization was constructed or established to settle the economic disputes with the modernization. Though they have invested in labor and services, and they had paid attention towards such matters. And that's why the countries like US and China also tried to cooperate with this organization. ASEAN is the fastest rising regional organization, and its visionary document 2020. In it, its role was felt and it was given much importance. ASEAN has tried to avoid the conflict with other nations, and that's why it ended its conflict with Cambodia, Eastern Timor, and Eastern Asian Organization. And therefore, in 1999, since 1999, they have been calling its meeting annually. Now, the economic power and other importance of ASEAN, especially for India and China, that is rising very high speed. With the development of trade and investment in Asian nation, which has made it very attractive place for investment. In the early years, in Indian foreign policy, ASEAN was not given much importance. But now, seeing its importance, India has made efforts to improve relations with these countries. And India has improved relations with two nations like Singapore as well as Thailand. And India has signed free trade agreement with these two nations. And India is trying to sign free trade treaty with ASEAN nations And main power of ASEAN is with its member nations, and it has tried to settle the disputes through negotiations. And it is the only organization of Asia which avails political platform not only to Asian nations but to world powers also to negotiate. That is why it has earned much importance during few years. Now we come to rise of Chinese economy. As you know well, China is our northern neighbor, and it is the third power of center. As an economic power, China has risen rapidly, and we have felt it many times. In 1978, China started writing story of its success as well as a big power. After economic reforms in China, it has shown much improvement in the economic sector, and it is considered that if it succeeds in this speed, in maintaining this speed, by 2040, China will be a big or the top economic power, even leaving behind America. And as it has relations with its neighboring country, so it has become an engine of development for Asian nations, and it has increased its importance in the regional matters. The huge population, big size, sufficient resources, and regional situation, as well as increasing political effect, that increased the importance of China. In 1949, in the leadership of Mao, a communist revolution took place in China, and in this way, it becomes People Republic of China. That was established on the economic model of Soviet Union. As earlier it was a backward nation because it had broken the relations with the outer world, and therefore China had no other option to depend on its own resources. Though for a short period it took help of Soviet Union, but the model China adopted, that was not considered good. The Chinese leaders withdrew investment from agriculture, and they stressed on establishing manufacturing industries under the control of government. As China had deficiency of foreign currency to purchase technique as well as goods from the other nations, so China stressed on manufacturing at its local level. And this provided China base to establish an industrial economy where China could use the resources available in their own nation. And they made effort. The Chinese leader, here they means Chinese leader, they made efforts to avail employment as well as the benefits of social welfare plannings to the people in nation. And in this way, China improved their rank in the health services. Even they left behind the developed countries. It succeeded in achieving the growth rate of 5 to 6%. But the increasing population at the speed of 2 to 3% per annum, that was spoiling all the efforts made by the Chinese government, and a big part of population could not get much benefit of these development. You can say that it was same condition in India too, like it was in China. So they could not take benefits of agriculture products. And we have discussed about the state controlled economy in the Soviet Union. The same situation was faced by China too. And due to huge population, the economic production was not giving the much benefit to China. And per capita income was very small, as well as the foreign trade was also near about nil. But to improve this condition, in 1970, China decided to change its economic policy. In 1972, they made efforts to improve relations with America. And in this way, as they had gone in exile after breaking all the foreign relations, but now China tried to improve the relations with capitalist countries. Though China was a communist country, but it could not neglect the capitalist country more. So, in 1973, the Chinese Prime Minister Mr. Zhou Enlai, he presented some resolutions like improvement in agriculture, industry, military, as well as science and technology. In 1978, then leader Deng Xiaoping, this man declared the open door policy for economic development of China. Now here, what do you mean by open door policy? Open door policy, that China was going to open her door for the outer world. They could come in China, and this way they could invest in China and start manufacturing unit in China. Now it had become clear that the foreign investment as well as the quality of technology, if these two things are achieved, then China could succeed a lot. And in this way, they could establish a market-based economy. Now, China did not follow the shock therapy, but they opened the door of their nation one by one. That means they established their policy first and then opened the doors. In 1982, the privatization of agriculture, and in 1998, the privatization of industries were two remarkable steps of China. And in this way, in trade, they removed the obstacles on the way to special economic areas or special economic zones, where the foreign companies could come to China and they could invest in China. The new economic policy helped China to rise from or come out from its poverty. This privatization increased the production of agriculture product. In this way, it improved the per capita income in rural areas. And in this way, this rural based economy improved, and therefore industries in rural area also increased. Now, industry and agriculture both were rising rapidly. The new rules and special economic zones construction or establishment, this helped in improving the foreign trade of China. Now, in all over the world, foreign direct investment increased in China, and now China had a huge amount of foreign currency. And on the base of this, even now, China has been investing in other countries. In 2001, it joined the World Trade Organization, and in this way, they opened the markets of China for many other nations too. Now, China was trying to associate or to connect its economy with the world economy, where it could change or it could leave impact on the world economy. You can say it could affect the world economy. Now, the dramatic changes that were seen in China, but its benefits could not reach to bottom. Even the rate of unemployment in China is very high, and a number of people are unemployed, where women condition in employment is not so bad as it was in Europe in 18th and 19th century. And the damage to environment as well as increase in corruption, these two results have also been noticed due to economic development in China. And the areas like rural and urban area. Now, the difference between rural areas and economic area are increasing very much. Though, as a regional power as well as global power, China has risen as a big economic power, and it had left a deep impact on the world politics. Now, you know well that most of the companies of various nations have established their production unit in China due to its less cost. Now, China not only leaving effect on politics but in industries also. Now, the countries like Japan, China, US, ASEAN nations as well as Russia, they all have put their disputes aside, and it is hoped that soon China will improve relations with Taiwan also. And in this way, the economy of Taiwan will also be affected by China. In 1997, after the economic crisis, the ASEAN nations they also sought help of China in improving their condition. The Latin America as well as African nations. Their policies are also affected by China. Now we come to relations between India and China. You know well that both nations have relations since the Gupta period. And you have studied in your earlier classes that many Chinese travelers visited India for higher studies. In ancient time, China had left deep impact on the small nations around it. And these small nations used to pay tribute to China. And the Chinese royal families or Chinese dynasties, they ruled over Mongolia, Korea and Indochina. And many dynasties in India, they also had relations with China. Now whether it is India or China, not only they had the political relations, but they had economic, religious as well as cultural relations also. Though the interest of both nations could not have conflict with each other, therefore the both nations tried to improve the relations, but could not succeed. And the result was that both nations could not understand each other. And when this became serious, it left deep impact on the foreign relation and many conflict took place. After having independence from the British period, China forced the foreign powers to leave their nation, and then it was hoped that the developing countries of Asia would come close to each other and they were to play important role in the world politics. Even in the sixth decade of 20th century, both countries tried to come close to each other, and in this way they gave a slogan, Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai. And this slogan became very popular, but soon, due to conflict over boundaries of the nations, it ended. After independence in 1950, China tried to occupy the neighboring country Tibet, and they started as establishing their human population there, and it was the beginning of becoming poor relations of both nations. China has claimed over some parts of India in east in Arunachal Pradesh as well as in some parts of Ladakh like Aksai Chin also. And these became the cause of conflict between the two nations in 1962, and in this way Indo-China War took place. Unfortunately, India had to face defeat in this war, and it left deep impact on the relations between the two nations, and for a long period they did not have any political relation or diplomatic relations. Till 1976, both nations could not come close to each other. But later, Slowly, they tried to improve the relations between the two nations, and in the later part of 1970, there was a political change in China, and now the ideological issues, now trade issues were becoming important. Therefore, China tried to improve relations with India. And they agreed to leave the disputes aside, and in 1981 they decided to have negotiation over the boundary issues. After the end of Cold War, big changes were noticed in the relations between the two nations. Now, these were not only diplomatic relations, but economic relations also. Now, both the nations accept each other as the rising power in the world politics, and they both want to play important role not only in economy but politics also. In December 1988, Mr. Rajiv Gandhi, the then Prime Minister, visited China, and in this way it was a new beginning of improving relations between the two nations. Now they decided to have the situation stand still and try to put aside the conflicts between the two countries. They started exchanging culture, science, technology, and they signed to open 4 military posts for the trade purpose. Since 1999, the trade between the two countries has been rising at the rate of 30%, and this gave a new turn to the relations between the two nations. In 1992, the both countries signed a treaty regarding trade of 33 crore 80 lakh dollars, and in 2006 it rose to 18 Arab dollars. Now both countries have agreed to solve the disputes by negotiation, and they are trying to improve relations, especially in the energy field. At global surface, both countries who are members of WTO or World Trade Organization and International Economic Organization. Now these two countries have decided to continue the relation and improve it by negotiation, and they will try to put aside the disputes. So these countries are coming close together, and through transportation as well as communication, they are trying to solidify the relations in a positive way. You may have noticed in the newspaper that many times, due to internal instability, sometimes it creates the condition of conflict, but usually these conflicts are settled at the military level. So we can hope that both nations will come close together and they will establish a new chapter of the peace. In 1998, the nuclear power test was declared positive regarding the danger from China, but still the relations had not deteriorated, and though China had helped Pakistan in establishing their nuclear program, but these countries have you can say average relations with Bangladesh as well as Myanmar. But still there is no big conflict between the two nations, and we can hope both countries will succeed in solving their border disputes, and it will be a beneficial for the world. And this is the end of your chapter. Prepare your questions from these chapters, and later we will discuss about it also. Have a good day. Thank you.